They didn't even look uncomfortable when they said it. That was the first thing that stayed with me. No hesitation, no guilt, just practiced sympathy. Your role has been identified as redundant. The HR manager folded her hands on the table like she was about to pray for me. I glanced at the conference room clock. 9:17 a.m. I would remember that time for the rest of my life. I'd been with the company for 11 years. 11 years of late nights, emergency calls, skipped holidays, and fixing problems no one else even understood. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't loud, I was reliable. The kind of employee companies love, right up until they don't. This isn't about performance, my director said quickly, like he'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. It's just restructuring. Restructuring. That word has destroyed more lives than any insult ever could. They slid a folder across the table. Severance package, non-disclosure agreement, 2 weeks of health coverage. A lifetime reduced to paper. I didn't argue. That surprised them. Most people beg, plead, ask what they did wrong. I didn't do any of that, because as they spoke, something else was playing in my head. A memory. 3 years earlier, a late-night call from a government compliance officer. "Are you the license operations holder?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Personally licensed?" "Yes." There'd been a pause. "Then you should know, without you, this company cannot legally operate." I looked back at the HR manager now. She smiles politely. They had no idea. Security escorted me out like I was a risk. Not angry, not dangerous, just unnecessary. My badge stopped working halfway down the hall. That stung more than I expected. At my desk, I packed quietly. Photos, a notebook, my coffee mug. No one looked at me. People are terrified of bad luck. They think it's contagious. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for a long time. Didn't cry, didn't scream. I checked my phone. 5 missed calls. All internal. Too late, because what they had just done, what they didn't realize yet, was fire the only person legally allowed to keep their operation alive. And the system they trusted so much, it didn't care about intentions, only licenses. I started the engine and waited, because panic takes time. Panic never arrives all at once. It seeps in through the cracks. The first sign came 2 days after they fired me. Not from the company, from the state. I was making coffee when my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring. When it rang again, I answered. "This is Daniel Mercer." A pause. "Mr. Mercer, this is the Department of Industrial Compliance. We're conducting a routine audit. We need to verify the status of your operational license." I leaned against the counter. "My license?" I asked calmly. "Yes. Our records show it's currently active, but your employer filed a termination notice." "That's correct." Another pause. Longer this time. "So you're no longer affiliated with the company?" "No." Silence. Then, "Thank you for confirming." The call ended. I smiled for the first time since the meeting. At noon, my former director emailed me. Friendly tone, casual subject line. Quick question. I didn't open it. At 12:17 p.m., he called. I let it go to voicemail. By evening, my inbox looked like a negotiation. HR, legal, operations, different voices, same message. Call us. I didn't, because the regulations were clear. The license wasn't transferable. It couldn't be temporarily assigned. It was bound to me, and without it, every shipment they sent out was illegal. Every contract was voidable. Every insurance policy was useless. That night, a former colleague texted me. "Something's wrong. Systems are locked. Compliance froze outbound ops." I didn't reply. The next morning, the director called again. This time, I answered. "Daniel," he said quickly, forcing warmth into his voice, "we may have made a mistake." I stayed silent. We'd like to discuss bringing you back. Maybe consult, short term. I'm no longer an employee, I said evenly. Yes, but you made that very clear. His voice tightened. You didn't disclose this dependency. I laughed. It slipped out before I could stop it. You never asked, I said. He hung up. That's when the emails turned aggressive. Legal language, threats, references to NDAs and cooperation. They still thought this was a negotiation. By Friday, regulators were on site. By Monday, shipments were delayed. By Wednesday, clients started asking questions, loud ones. And then the CEO called. Not an assistant, not legal, him. Name your price, he said. I looked out the window at the city below. It was never about money, I replied. Then what do you want? He asked. I thought carefully before answering. I want the truth documented, I said. And I want it public. What truth? He asked. That I was terminated for convenience, not redundancy, that the decision violated internal policy, and that the company knowingly risked regulatory failure. Her breath caught. That would be damaging. Yes, I agreed. The call ended politely. The threats resumed immediately after. That night, I reviewed the compliance manual they'd never bothered to read, the clause they'd ignored, the one that said any lapse in licensed oversight required mandatory disclosure to regulators within 72 hours. They were already late. The next morning, news broke. Not nationally, industry-specific. A trade publication reported temporary operations suspended pending compliance review. Stock dripped 3%. That's when fear reached the boardroom. The CEO called me personally. No legal language, no threats, just a sentence. We are prepared to acknowledge mistakes. I waited a full day before responding. Then I sent 3 bullet points. Public correction of termination cause, formal apology filed with regulators, full severance for all employees affected by the shutdown. No signature, no emotion. An hour later, my phone rang. This will ruin us, the CEO said quietly. No, I replied. What you did already started that. That night, I slept well. Better than I had in months, because for the first time, they weren't controlling the narrative. I was. When pressure builds high enough, it doesn't just crack systems, it cracks people. The board meeting happened without me. I knew because 3 different people texted me within an hour, each one telling a slightly different version of the same story. That's how you know the truth is ugly. They argued for 6 hours. Blame bounced around the room like a live wire. Operations blamed HR blamed legal blamed compliance blamed leadership. And leadership did what it always does when it's cornered. They looked for someone to throw away. The HR manager was the first casualty. The same woman who folded her hands and told me my role was redundant. She was terminated before lunch. No severance, no protection, no apology. Just a quiet email announcing her departure. I read it twice, not because I felt sorry for her, but because I recognized the pattern. The company didn't learn. It panicked. That afternoon, regulators issued a formal notice. Operations were officially suspended until a licensed holder was reinstated or replaced. Replacing me would take months. Training, certification, approval. Months they didn't have. Clients were already leaving. The CEO called again. His voice sounded older. We can reinstate you immediately. Full authority, increased compensation. I looked at the email announcing the HR manager's firing. No, I said, you'll do it publicly. A pause. You want your job back? I want accountability, I replied. That night, a board member reached out privately, not officially, not recorded. This has gone too far, he said. People are losing their livelihoods. Because of your decision, I said. We didn't know. You didn't bother to know, I corrected. Silence. Then, what happens if we refuse? I leaned back in my chair. Then regulators decide for you. By morning, the stock dropped again. Analysts noticed. So did the press. A business columnist tweeted, "How does a company fire the only licensed operations holder?" That tweet did more damage than any lawsuit ever could. At noon, the board voted, not unanimously, but decisively. They would comply. A press release went live that evening, carefully worded, too careful. It admitted procedural oversights and regrettable decisions. It reinstated my role, and it promised a full internal review. But it didn't name names, and that wasn't enough. I drafted my response. Short, precise. Because if there's one thing corporations fear more than regulators, it's clarity. I didn't give interviews, not at first. I released a statement. It was 1 page long. No insults, no emotion, no accusations I couldn't prove. Just facts. Dates, emails, internal policy excerpts, regulatory clauses, and one sentence that changed everything. At the time of my termination, senior leadership was aware that my license was legally required for continued operations. I posted it publicly. Then I went offline. The reaction was immediate. Industry forums lit up, analysts revised reports, clients started asking very specific questions the company couldn't answer without lying, and they couldn't lie anymore. By noon, the press wanted more. By evening, former employees started talking, not about me, about everything else. Cost-cutting shortcuts, ignored safety warnings, pressure to falsify compliance reports, things they'd been afraid to say until now. The company tried to regain control. They scheduled a press conference. The CEO stood behind a podium and spoke about miscommunication, that word again. Miscommunication doesn't shut down operations. Negligence does. A reporter asked the question they'd been avoiding. Did you knowingly terminate the only licensed operations holder? The CEO hesitated, just a fraction of a second. But cameras love hesitation. No, he said finally. That was the lie. Because 20 minutes later, an email leaked, sent weeks before my termination. Subject line, license dependency risk. He'd been CC'd. Everyone saw it. The stock dropped 12% in one afternoon. The board issued an emergency statement, and suddenly the CEO was stepping aside. I watched the news from my living room. No celebration, no satisfaction, just a quiet acknowledgement of something important. Truth doesn't need anger. It just needs daylight. 2 days later, regulators cleared a conditional restart, only under one requirement: my oversight. Temporary, independent, with full authority. I accepted. Not for them, for the people who would otherwise lose their jobs, the ones who never sat in that conference room. When I walked back into the building, no one escorted me. No badge failed. People looked at me this time, some with relief, some with shame. I didn't stay long, 3 months, long enough to stabilize operations, long enough to train a replacement, long enough to document everything. Then I resigned, publicly, on my terms. By the time I resigned, the company was already a different place. Not better, just smaller. 3 executives were gone, not fired, removed, quietly, strategically, permanently. The board restructured, departments were merged, expansion plans were canceled. They called it recovery. It wasn't. It was survival. The official investigation took almost a year, long enough for attention to fade, long enough for people to think it would all end with a fine and a footnote. They were wrong. The regulator's final report was brutal. It outlined willful disregard for licensing requirements, documented internal warnings ignored, retaliatory termination masked as restructuring. No adjectives, just conclusions. The company paid the largest compliance penalty in its sector's history. Insurance refused coverage. Investors sued. Contracts were rewritten or terminated. The brand never recovered. As for me, I disappeared. Not dramatically, deliberately. I started consulting independently, under my own terms. Clients sought me out not because I was cheap, but because I was careful, because I knew what happened when shortcuts were taken, and when people were treated as replaceable. Occasionally, someone from the old company would reach out, an apology, a question, a request. I never responded, not out of anger, out of closure. People ask me now if I planned it, if I knew what would happen when they fired me. The truth is simpler. I didn't plan revenge. I planned survival. The rest was just consequences. The company once called me redundant. They weren't wrong, eventually. They just chose the wrong moment to find out. Because power isn't about titles, it's about leverage. And the most dangerous leverage of all is being the only one who knows how something actually works.